All right, welcome back, everybody. Hopefully you had some success following our last course and undertaking your personality tests and understanding your strengths. Welcome to course 3, where we're going to move on to the third and final part of the self-discovery sequence upon reviewing the results of your personality tests and begin to investigate the links from it to potential career paths. Our objectives for today are to confirm those aspects of your personality, the outputs you had from the test that you've taken, understand what typical career alternatives are for veterans coming out of the service, and determine which career alternative might best align with your personality type. The skills we intend to develop here are your ability to relate that personality type to potential career paths. As always, you can reference my book, specifically chapter 2. Always come prepared to take notes, and you'll obviously need to have access to standard software and my website. Again, you'll find my website chock full of tools, templates, worksheets, etc. Social media, you'll find me on multiple sites, as you see there. And again, highly encourage that you take this with a peer that's perhaps going through the same as you. We're still at the front end of our transition sequence, again, understanding who you are and who you want to be. I'll just foot stomp once again the importance of this and the imperative that you spend a sufficient amount of time pondering this. All right, so the first portion of this course has to deal with reviewing the outcomes from the psychometric tests that you took. Again, I highlighted 4, encourage you to take at least 2, if not more. Yes, they cost some money and took a little bit of time, but all well worth it. I'm hopeful that the results resonate with you, potentially even being a bit of a surprise, something you heretofore had not necessarily considered. And that's not a bad thing. It's simply uncovering and connecting your personal passions with what potentially resides for you out in the real world. Again, something that you potentially hadn't even pondered or considered. Again, consider the fact that you've likely spent the majority, if not the entirety, of your adult life in the military. And now, for once, you have this incredible freedom to not only choose a career field, but basically every other decision from the point in time you wake up in the morning to how you get on with your day. It's a lot to unpack. It's a lot to uncover, and it presents, as my book lays out, incredible challenges at every turn. And that's why this step-by-step guide exists for you. So digest, if you will, the outcomes of these tests. They tend to go into a fair amount of detail about what your skills are and how they relate to specific career fields. And so with that understanding, then let's move on to translating the who, where we've spent all of our time to date focused so far, into the what. How does the who translate into your potential career paths? What you'll see on this page is a typical decision chart, or it's a decision tree, if you will, of typical career paths that veterans tend to take coming out of the service. I'll walk you through it from left to right. A transitioning veteran tends to follow one of 3 major paths, that being either going back to school, which again was my choice. Only about 4% of you tend to do that, or go to work in either for the government at the bottom of the page to the tune of 15%, or outside of the government, which far and away is the majority that all of you choose. Walking them back from there, let's go down to the government service. That service would take the form of employment in either federal or state and local, somewhat evenly divided there, or going back to the top of the page, non-government service, either defense industry or non-defense industry. I should add that college or graduate school tends to not be an end in and of itself, although there are potential career fields therein. Typically, folks coming out of college or graduate school will likewise go to either government roles or non-government roles. Uh, Going back up to the top of the page there on defense industry, non-defense industry, the defense industry tends to take the course of one of two options there, either serving the defense industry as a consultant or potentially as a contractor. Whereas the non-defense industry, there are many options and which run the options for the balance of the chart here. In non-defense industry, there's a couple of what I'll call entrepreneurial type options. One being an entrepreneur, meaning starting your own business, hanging your own shingle, if you will, or franchising. And I go into a lot of detail on franchising in the book. It's a way to be an entrepreneur without having all of the risk, where there's an established brand name that helps back your effort. I won't go into a ton of detail here, but I would categorize both of them as being entrepreneurial type options. You can see only about 2% of transitioning veterans take that. Far and away, the majority follow the non-entrepreneur path, which consists of either working in commercial industry to the tune of 54%, or working in nonprofits. And then in commercial industry, work therein takes one of many different flavors. And I'm going to flip to the next chart to tease out that in much greater detail. When you think about industry, the economy in the United States, it consists of any number of industries. And you see those industry sectors annotated on this page. They're documented, categorized by the government in what's called a NAICS code. And what's reflected on this page are the 2017 NAICS codes. They tend not to change that much. Again, it's just a way of categorizing, grouping various aspects of the US economy. Okay, but you can bifurcate those sectors by various types of companies, which I'm referring to the top part of the chart. There are large companies, medium-sized companies, and smaller-sized companies. The types of work available to transitioning veterans take one of many forms. In large and medium-sized companies, you can do industry work, meaning actually working in those industries, or consulting to those industries, working for a professional services firm that cater to those various industries or their sectors. And then within that work, either industry work or consulting work, that it can be done in companies that are public, meaning owned by shareholders, or private, meaning owned by the business's founders or an insider group of shareholders. Now, you notice that there's the same breakout, if you will, for industry, consulting, public, private, in both large and medium-sized companies, but not so much in smaller companies. Smaller companies tend to not hire a lot of consultants because, one, they're small and they don't have the resources typically of their medium and large size peers. And so as a result, from a transitioning veteran and a typical career field, that tends not to be an option, although working within small companies, doing industry work, be it a public or private organization, is definitely on the table. So anyway, as you're considering work in the non-entrepreneurial space and commercial industry, you should think through this as kind of being the matrix of your options. And again, I refer back to your strengths exercises and your personality test to help you identify, at least initially, where within these matrices, if you're considering non-entrepreneurial commercial work, where it might fall. Now, we'll get into, in succeeding chapters here, ways to further confirm or deny these current hypotheses you have right now. But this can suffice at present for an initial direction. Now, you may end up in perusing that decision tree and the matrix I just walked through with any number of hypotheses in terms of where your career field might optimally lie. And that's completely fine. There's no reason to expect yourself to come out of this and have a single particular career field nailed down. Not so. But in terms of weighing those various hypotheses, those potential career paths, here's a helpful tool. And let me just kind of walk you through this prioritization matrix, as I call it. And by the way, this is available for download for free on my website, MatthewJLewis.com. Here's how it works. You'll download the Excel spreadsheet. It's very simple. You'll populate criteria in the first column. What are those elements by which you want to make a decision about your various career paths? So brainstorm that list. You make it as long as you'd like. For each of those criteria, I want you to rank them in the second column on a 1 to 5 scale. For you, which of those are less important or more important? So 1 to 5 scale, 1 is less important and 5 is most important to you. All right, next, you want to list out your options across the top. At the moment, I'm just showing A, B, C, D, but you would actually list what your career path, career field options actually look like across the top. And then walk through each of the criteria for each of those options and rate it on a 1, 3, 9 scale. 1 being that it's not a good fit, 3 that it is a good fit, or 9 that it is a best fit. And you want to do this not only with yourself, you want to include your family in making these decisions as well. And in doing so, what you'll find, and again, the spreadsheet set up to do this, is to facilitate the cross multiplication, multiplies the rankings against your ratings, and produces the sum total, if you will. It's the outcome in the last row there, and a manner that takes all of the emotion out of this, and it may help directionally you and your family to begin to narrow your focus, if not begin to make decisions regarding this. I've found this to be very useful throughout my career and weighing various decisions, and you'll see us circle back applying the same tool later in the book. All right, so there you have it. Your homework in this course is to research those possible career paths. And in the additional reading here, you'll find any number of resources that I'll post for that. Again, check out the book for perspectives from peers like you that have gone through this successfully. Look for detailed investigation of typical career path options. In the book, I walk through each of them, talking through what skill sets, what strengths tend to be aligned with these particular career paths. Review of Department of Labor's competency model. This is incredibly important, and it's something that the government's translation courses don't go into. And then, as always, additional sources to support your transition here. Some final words to the wise, all right? Recognize your career path preferences are going to change over time. What you decide today may not be what your priorities are 5 years from now. There are things in your life that happen. Life happens, right? You get married, you have kids, you work for one organization that may change, you may move. Things change. So revisit these career preferences over time to make sure you and your family's priorities continue to be aligned. All right. If you can't narrow your focus, even in spite of the prioritization matrix, you're going to need to identify a corporate culture or maybe a size of an organization that allows flexibility in roles over time. One thought is to consider rotational programs that enable you to work in multiple areas of an organization prior to determining in which part of that organization you would choose to end up working. Additional resources, again, lots of them here. Please take advantage. Lots of ways in which you can do some research to investigate those career paths. All right, and notice again, we have one tagged here for career military professionals, those that have spent, say, more than 15 or 20 years in the service. Please take advantage of these. Again, all of them augment, and I pulled from them in referencing or in drafting mission transition. Again, here's my contact information, and here's a video that will walk you through my own decision about how I ended up choosing college as my transition vehicle. So let's listen in.
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, I got out a long time ago at a time where there was literally very little to no support coming out. Had to kind of figure it out on my own. I happened to come across, I forget who recommended it to me, but What Color is Your Parachute by Dick Bowles, best-selling job change book I picked up and worked through the flower exercise that's in there. It was very useful, and hadn't found anything up to that point that could serve me better. So I worked through that, and that led to any number of additional things. There's lots of exercises. Yeah, part of those exercises involved, translating what I'd done in the military and rehearsing answers to interview questions in a way, and this is a struggle for all veterans, in a way that civilians can understand. I mean, it's a key thing. It's one of the basic questions that my book tries to tackle here in a way that better makes sense for veterans. And I struggled valiantly. My wife would tell you, we'd been married just a couple years at the time, I would flip her one of any number of interviewing guides I'd had at that point in time every night, and I just said, we'd spend a couple hours every night, hit me with these questions. We would just practice and rehearse and rehearse. She was in medical school at the time. She had nothing to do with the military, so she was, thankfully correctly poised to give me unvarnished feedback on my responses and the extent to which they would be intelligible to your everyday civilian. Even with that, lots of nights and lots of practice working through that, all of which is frustrating, I know. I was still left and going in front of folks doing interviews for graduate school, just kind of having blank stares on their faces to some of my examples. I was still using some of the three-letter acronyms, some of the military terminology. These folks didn't have any military background. And so they were kind of left befuddled, and I could recognize it, but I was so frustrated by my inability to connote what I'd done in the military and how that would translate and have an impact in the real world. Thankfully, perhaps they took pity on me, but I did make my way into graduate school eventually. And for me, that was a great choice. It enabled me 2 years, one, to, as I called it, to deprogram at the time, to spend time understanding how my peers in the civilian world actually, lived, worked, played, thought, spoke, wrote. So that was huge for me, getting 2 years of exposure to, frankly, the rest of the outside world before I would have to jump in on my own. The second thing it allowed me to do, other than deprogramming, is to upskill, to acquire a whole new skill set that would enable me to be more conversant and add more value coming out of the military. So while, if I believe figures reflect about 4 or 5% of veterans use college or graduate school to transition to the real world, for me, because I did it, I thought it was an incredibly useful way to transition, and I'd highly recommend it. Again, the fact that you have all these benefits and the GI Bill and what have you coming out, take advantage of those things. It's going to serve you and your family well.
All right, gang. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.